You could have heard this episode 48 hours early on our Patreon, patreon.com/Indieheads Podcast. By joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll receive episodes early and gain access to our Discord server. All of our upcoming episodes we up on our Patreon feed 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. But if you're hearing this via our Patreon feed, we thank you so much for your support. We especially want to thank our Real Ones patrons, including Becca Etienne, Georgia Mikowski, Delaney Miller, Rana Cruz, Josiah Duncan, Janelle LaFleur, Matt Cameron, Great in the Back of My Dragula, Pablo Escobar's Hippos, Jackson Christ, Alec Felder, Jeremy Bowl, Marcy Anime, Jonathan David, Max Kapazinski, Mark Barry, Aaron Hillsamer, Darian Fisher, Gayers420, Cal 50, Certified Dave Matthews Cream Pie Baby, Chris Wade, Jacqueline Kataga, Midwest Maxwell, Kevin John, Jake Wald, Eraserhead Baby, Rob Marino, Max, Dylan, Sandy Nemo, Waffle113, Gavin490 Freak, and Maze Farms. To become a real one, consider supporting us for $5 a month on Patreon, where you'll receive a bonus episode every month and get a shout out at the top of the pod. Anyways, though, enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. It is me, your host, Maddie Monroe, at Marvian Prince on Twitter, here for episode 200 of the Indieheads Podcast. Now, as of right now, I am all alone. I'm by myself, as this is going to be an out-of-format episode, as I have asked our cast members to send me a little transmission. I asked everyone to send me an individual transmission for episode 200, where I gave them the simple prompt of talk about a song and/or album that is important to you that we talked about on the podcast, presumably important within the context of the podcast. But if you want to talk about yourself, go for it. I don't care. And that's what we're doing. So a number of members have sent in transmissions, and I'm gonna just start playing them and give my thoughts. And so first up to bat is one of our OG members, one of the few originals left standing. That is AJ Moser. So AJ Moser, let's see what he had to say for episode 200 of the Indieheads Podcast.
What's up, Marty, and all the young stunnas of the Indieheads Podcast? It's episode 200. We're a podcast first, the only podcast that's taken 8 years to record 200 episodes. I think that's some kind of record of swindling money out of Patreon listeners. But, lore heads of the Indieheads Podcast will, of course, remember that I was on the very first episode of the Indieheads Podcast, the Album of the Year 2014 special, where we debated the merits of such great artists like Run the Jewels and Sun Kill Moon and Swans. And I've been with the podcast ever since, talking about some great artists like Mac DeMarco, Pinegrove, Kanye West, Arcade Fire, Daughters, just tons of great artists that we love to represent here on the Indieheads Podcast. I mean, we've done so many incredible episodes on. It's been such a great run. Made so many great friends, had so many great people join the Discord, leave the Discord, all that sort of stuff. And so here's to 200 more episodes in 2030. Wonder what the world's going to look like then. Wonder what President Peter Griffin is going to have in store for us. But I'm going to keep this one short and sweet in traditional Indieheads Podcast fashion. My last sign-off message here is just... I'm opening the file on my desktop. I've got a quick little message about Muse that I wanted to rattle off just real quickly. And then, sorry, I'm scrolling up from page 35. So it starts like this.
Thanks, AJ, for that wonderful message featuring all those bands that we still love today. But anyways, of course, AJ, as he mentioned, is one of the OG members, was on the very first episode of the podcast. And we don't really have a whole lot of those people who were on that first episode that are still active today. Only a very few. And I think AJ might be the only one that submitted a transmission for now, at least. But we have another relative OG member in Lily. So let's see what Lily had to say for this episode.
Hello, my little podlings on either side of the microphone. This is Lily beaming in to celebrate our 200th episode, which is both a lot of episodes and not that many episodes relative to the 8 years we have been doing this show for, which, in my opinion, is the far more upsetting and potent number to consider. But I'm getting ahead of myself on that. As I understand it, the assignment is to talk about, an album or episode that holds a particular importance to us for our own history in the podcast. And I think, to no one's surprise, I would have to choose Soft Sounds from Another Planet and the accompanying episodes we did for that, both at its initial release and, the follow-up episodes we did as well. I think that was, especially that first episode in 2017, was very, very important to me for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think not to give ourselves too much credit, but the sort of way we contributed to the nudge that ended up pushing the Michelle's Honor snowball down the mountain, in my opinion, is one of the cooler things this podcast has ever, contributed to it in the broader musical landscape. And I think to really see that come full circle with the release of Soft Sounds, where we got that affirmation of like, okay, we were right to be banging this drum. Like this person is going to be a star. We weren't being hyperbolic for no reason. That was a really cool moment, and was also just a big moment for me personally. I've talked a lot, actually, in the last Soft Sounds episode we did, our retrospective, about the role that album played for me, just in terms of, the time it came out and where I was at in my life. That was just an album that really allowed me to understand, the new ways that I connected to music as like an out trans woman, and the fact that I was able to talk about it and relate to it in those terms. And so, that initial episode we did upon release, I think actually might have been the first or maybe the second episode I had done since, like, really coming out to like everyone in my life publicly. Like, I was capital O out by then. And, I remember, like, when I first told everyone on the podcast 6 months prior to that episode, I just think about like how scared and ashamed I was. Like, I believe I told everyone essentially in the form of an apology, to do with this practicality about like me going to Pitchfork with everyone for the first time. And, especially in like late 2016, early 2017, the place I was having to sort of take these tentative steps out of the closet in like this, very conservative province that I was living in. I just was, had so much fear and trepidation about that. And, it's silly to think of now, but in my head, thought of, me coming out to everyone on the podcast as like, okay, well, that means I'm like not going to be on the podcast anymore or whatever. Like, I thought everyone was just going to hate me, and, to have the response be what it was, and almost this non-response of everyone being like, oh yeah, that's great. Like, why on earth would that affect you coming to Pitchfork or you're standing at the podcast or anything? Like, this is good. That was one of the early moments where I felt this kind of just unquestioning acceptance from people, of people just being like, well yeah. And I think that set a really good precedent for me. Like that was a moment that taught me to expect that from others. And I'm so grateful in hindsight. And, you think about like, I mean, just through pure happenstance, like I was sort of the first person on the podcast to come out in any major way. And we've had like no shortage of people do that since then. It's very wild to think in hindsight, like, especially in those early couple of years, for the most part, like how homogenous we all were. And, we're still homogenous today in certain respects, of course, but like really, really, it was quite pointed at that time. And it's been so amazing for me just to think about, where we were at in that moment when I came out versus, where we are now with this wild gaggle of people of all kinds of stripes and sensibilities. The fact that we were able to sort of have that arc and arrive at the place that we are now, I have so much pride in us for that, and also a lot of gratitude. It just like, if only that me who thought I was going to get kicked off the podcast for coming out could see where we are now. That's just a very powerful thing to consider. And thinking about what I'm going to say for this, I have been thinking about that arc overall for us. Like, we started 8 years ago. Most of us were babies. Most of those early episodes are unlistenable because of it. Like, I think I remember, I don't know if I've told the story on mic before, but when I first reached out to like Maddie and Jeremiah about joining the podcast, I was so scared of them because I thought they were like 30. And then I got in the Skype and I was like, wait a minute, I'm like the second oldest person here. Like, what the hell? We really have all grown up together in broad daylight over the course of doing this show. And that's I think that's part of what has allowed the podcast to blossom into this very special and I think unique entity. I was thinking the other day about like, what is the secret sauce of this show? And, a major part of that is that like, if you're a fan of this show, you're really a fan of like 6 different shows that exist within this show. What's really unique about us is that we've become like effectively a podcast network that operates as a single podcast. And, I can't really think of many other examples of that in this space. And I think that's what has allowed us to keep growing and evolving, is that like, as much as Maddie is of course the anchor to all of this, the podcast is not necessarily dependent on the contributions of, or the opinions or whatever, it's not framed around a single person. It is this sort of loose conglomeration of all these different combinations of people. And that variety in terms of sensibility and interest and tone, as soon as like, it took us a while, but as soon as we learned to really like lean into that, that so obviously became our superpower. And, that's a thing of like, if anyone else is starting a podcast, like, I would tell them, I would be like, if they said that's what we're going to do for our show, I'd be very like James Murphy voice, like, don't do it that way. You'll never make a dime. But here we are. And I'm very grateful for that and proud of that. And, I've always held this belief that like, since I joined this podcast, I've thought that the best possible outcome for this show would be that we stop doing it because we're all too successful to have time for it anymore. And, we have no intention of stopping anytime soon. Like, quite frankly, just because we're all having too much fun. It's really incredible that that's like starting to happen. People are like getting jobs and establishing careers and like, getting published and getting all these other like really cool opportunities that like came through this collection of people and the work we all did together. And the fact that even though, maybe it took us a long time, the fact that we were able to actually like manifest that intention again is something I'm so proud of and grateful for. And I'm just really grateful that I got this sort of insider seat to watching this really wonderful collection of people grow together and find themselves, both like as critics or whatever else we are, but also just like as people. It's funny to think that like, this group of people I started doing a show with in 2015 or whatever, like, have become some of the people I've known the longest and the best in my entire life. And I would have never called that when I joined. And that's really, really exceptional to me. And in thinking about the show in those terms, you know, the thing that really is my takeaway from all this is that however long the podcast goes for past this point, or however long I'm a member of it past this point or whatever, like, you know, who knows? But the one thing I do know for sure is that everyone I have done this podcast with, like, they're going to be in my life forever. Like, that's just a certainty at this stage. And what a beautiful thing to find that through this silly little project that we've all embarked on together. You just don't get that very much in your life. And, you know, I for a long time was never particularly certain I would get that in my life. But here we are, and I'm so fucking grateful for all of you and, you know, all the listeners who have stuck with us and also, you know, helped make the show better and make it into this thing that is not just this goofy little project, despite what I just said, but, you know, it's a thing we've really chipped at and worked at, and it's turned into something really special and exciting. And again, it's been such an honor to have this sort of insider view to it and to have other people engage with it as well. It's really, really incredible. I've gone long, and Maddie is going to yell at me, but hopefully he won't be that mad when he hears what I said. Or maybe he will be. Who knows? I mean, what would this podcast be if one of us didn't make Maddie upset in the course of celebrating these 200 episodes? Okay, yeah. I think I've said everything that I want to say. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to my wonderful friends and podmates. I love you all. See ya on the next episode.
I'm just recording these little, you know, transitional bits just sort of live as I edit. And that made me cry. And I think that really articulated what is so special about this podcast better than I could. But we'll get there. We'll get there at the end with my thoughts. But coming up next, let's fucking, I'm just gonna roll the dice. Let's go random. Honestly, just totally based on who's saying stuff first. This is another OG member of the pod, a relative OG within the first year person, and that is Will for Thrill. So let's see what William for Thrillium had to say.
What's up? It's your boy Will for Thrill coming at you at the behest of one Matthew Monroe, who has requested me to send a clip talking about a song or album that's been discussed on the pod. That means a lot to me in context of the pod. So I thought no better place to go than all the way back to the beginning, to my very first episode, my podcasting debut, with our episode about the album Sometimes I Sit and Think, Sometimes I Just Sit by Courtney Barnett, her 2015 debut album. My podcasting debut, talking about Courtney Barnett's debut. And so I'd been, at that point, I'd gone just a few months prior into the Indieheads subreddit. It was pretty active on there. I was getting really into all kinds of indie music, as it were. And I had listened to a couple episodes of the podcast that Maddie had posted. And to be honest, I didn't think they were very good as a podcast. However, it sounded like they were having a lot of fun. So I figured I wanted in. I want some friends, you know. Who doesn't want friends with common interests linking in a building? So I requested and was graciously accepted. And we recorded this first episode. It was on a Friday. That was back in the day, as old folks remember, when new music was released on Tuesdays. which was nice for us at the time when we were still mostly just a new music discussion podcast. So music would come out on Tuesdays, then we could record an episode about it on Friday. So yeah, it's Courtney. I was 20 years old. That's just a stray piece of information. And yeah. So the only things I remember about the episode is I do remember Alex, Ethan, and Sarah being on. Sarah, not Sarah LeBig, our current Sarah, but OG Sarah. I don't remember her last name, but the real heads know. I don't explicitly remember Maddie, but he was probably there, and so was Jeremiah. I don't explicitly remember him, but he was around and out and about at that time. And I do remember that about 10 minutes into that episode, they stopped recording because I Arrested Development reference. I said, I prematurely shut my wad, which made people so uncomfortable that we had to stop and they had to ask me what I was talking about. And then, but once they didn't know me or what my vibe was yet, so I explained that, and then we went back to recording and discussed this album, about which I think I have pretty much the same opinion about now as I did back then. You know, this was her debut, and she was came into prominence for her slacker rock stylings, derivative of the 90s, Pavement, things of that nature, and her slice of life songwriting, her quaint lyrics. And I like this album at its best, I think, when it's more upbeat and kind of, like I used the word quaint before, but yeah, like this opening track, Elevator Operator. I think that's lyrically probably her best song on the album. Kind of just a story about a friend of hers who liked to go up to tall buildings to look around and think, and people accidentally thinking that he might be attempting suicide and him having to explain that away. And so there's those kind of like slice of life stories that are kind of her strong suit. And then, but I think one track that kind of rubbed me the wrong then, and it still kind of rubs me wrong, is Depreston, which is the song that has this kind of slow, kind of sad build to it. You know, she's house hunting, or I guess looking at going to open house and looking around, and then, you know, it's building up to this like something sad, something crazy is about to happen, you know, and then at the very end, just like, oh, I saw a picture of a guy in a military uniform and it made me sad because he's probably dead or something. It's like, I don't know, just felt like it was kind of a lot of people really liked that song, but I just thought like that she never really delivered on the promise. Thought it was kind of a red herring, and yeah, in general, I think that kind of showed her shortcomings as a songwriter sometimes. But there's other songs like Pedestrian at Best. I think that was the lead single. I think the big hit, and probably my favorite, probably the best song here overall. You know, her song kind of about warning against celebrity worship, as it were. You know, put me on a pedestal, I'll only disappoint you. And I think that was kind of foreboding of the rest of her career. You know, she went on to make that collaboration album, a whole lot of Sea Lice with Kurt Vile, of whom which I met at the airport once. Nice guy. And I think that I did not like that album at all. Okay, I think, I like Courtney Barnett and I like Kurt Vile, but they both have shortcomings as songwriters, and I feel like they brought out all of their worst habits together. Just kind of that really lethargic record. They're kind of the nasally annoying parts of their vocal range. It's not really nasally, but I can't come up with the correct word to describe what I don't like about their vocals at the moment. I think I made I made a joke that was popular on the Indieheads subreddit at the time about how between the two of them, they don't own a single bottle of shampoo, because they both have pretty ratty looking hair. Anyways, and then she went on to make Tell Me How You Really Feel in 2018 to much less fanfare, much less commercial or critical success. And then in 2021 to even less critical or commercial success with Things Take Time, you know. Like after that after 2015 and 2016, she was kind of, she started out as a flavor of the week, but then she started gaining more and more momentum, getting radio play on XMU and whatnot. And she went on all the late night shows. And I think she even played the SNL Saturday Night Live season finale with, I think, Fred Armisen hosting. So really indie-tacular episode there. And then she was nominated for Best New Artist, I remember, at the Grammys, which is usually a pretty big deal that you're going places. But I don't really know what happened, but I think, she just kind of got disillusioned by the whole celebrity thing, kind of, for just chilling out down under Nazi, which is good for her. So, Courtney Barnett, it's a nice, lighthearted album. If you haven't listened to it yet, I would definitely suggest it, especially if it's like a sunny day, taking a drive around the town, running some errands. This is the type of music for that. So as for the podcast itself, I've had mixed relationship with over the years, as a podcast, that is, but as a group, it's been 7 years now, and I'm still very active in the chat. Some of my best friends in the online world are still in this realm. So I'm very grateful for that. I think as a podcast, we were sort of on our dying breath until the Butt Rock series, which changed everything, which changed our mission statement from just an indie podcast to we're not really an indie podcast at all anymore, just but in name. Really now it's just kind of a podcast just for, I don't even know what to describe it as now. We're into guys now. And remembering some remembrance of them. So, here's to another 7 years, I guess. Ciao.
Thank you, Will. So another OG, Dion. I think the last OG that sent me, at least OG is basically anyone that joined the cast in like the 2014-2015 season, the very early dog days of the pod. But for someone that is a kind of OG, someone that joined very early on, I think this person originally joined in late 2015, early 2016. Eventually they ended up leaving the pod, but they came back strong in 2018 as a full-time member. And since then have been one of our hardest working members on the podcast. Of course, I am talking about Rose. So Rose, you're up next. Take it away.
Howdy, y'all. Rose here. Still on a, just whatever break, whatever. But I figured I'd throw a few nice words out for Marty. I've been on the podcast full-time officially for nearly 3 years now, and I would like to say, despite the severe amounts of bullying I get in here, I love the show. I really do. I very, very earnestly do. I love goofing around on here and just having a nice time with my friends or whatever prestigious guests I end up embarrassing myself in front of on a regular basis. But I really do love the few moments of earnest discussion we do manage to slide into these days and really make something special. This podcast is a group of some of the smartest and most talented people I know, fully dedicating themselves to the dumbest possible things. Just look at it. It's perfect. Getting into it, I thought pretty hard about my favorite things I've encountered here, things that either shattered my brain or discussions that felt like a genuine bomb upon whatever was going on in my life. Before I get to the big one, the one I actually wanted to talk about, I would briefly like to shout out the following episodes, which I will not be talking about today. First of all, I need to shout out the song Thunder by Imagine Dragons, which hit me at the exact moment my brain was obliterating itself and allowed me to project one of my most severe moments of painful sincerity into the podcast. I love Thunder, but please never let me do anything like that again on the show. I'm very sorry again to our guest Danielle for being thrown in unaware to that. That was very cruel. Number 2, Soft Sounds from Another Planet. That is another record I consider talking about. The retrospective we did on that is, oh my God, that episode was like, it was healing. We all cried, but it was a good cry. Thanks to Lily and Corinne for really, joining me in a space where we could excavate every feeling that came forward from that record. It was special. And then finally, for runner-ups, of course, Boom Boom Pow by Black Eyed Peas. I mean, Gotta Get That is like maybe the most deranged thing I've ever been a part of. 2.5 hours until y'all literally kicked me off and said, like, fuck you, stop talking. I don't know anywhere else where I would get the platform to be that stupid. And I appreciate that greatly. Anyway, the song I want to talk about today is Dr. Worm by They Might Be Giants. I mean, I feel like, I could have talked about The Reason by Hoobastank, because that song kind of owns, but also, like, I feel like picking anything else would be off-brand for me. This song is near perfect. It's from a band that I'll be forever endeared to because they wrote a bunch of near perfect songs, and they're my brand of sincere silliness. It doesn't hold any pretension. It is exactly what it claims on the tin. They call me Dr. Worm. I am a real worm. I am an actual worm. I live like a worm. It really doesn't get better than that. A 3-minute pop song dedicated to something so unbearably ridiculous that it'd make no sense if anyone else tried it. When it got thrown in on the playlist for songs to change your gender to, I really thought nothing of it, even though I was already well familiar. But still, the surprise in seeing that A, all of my co-hosts had become incredibly endeared to it, and B, that we managed to get a very genuinely fun and caring discussion out of something that simple meant the world to me. That song and the time we spent with it reminds me why I continue to care about this podcast, even in the moments when I think about quitting it. Like, the friends I have here will continue to surprise me, and the things we share together will still bring me joy as we repeat this thing in new configurations again and again, We're like the song says, we're interested in things. Who can say that isn't beautiful?
Thank you, Rose. Yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to our next contestant. This person is one of my best friends in the entire world, and this is I have never told. I think I have told very little people about this. I definitely have not told Jackie. So Jackie, this is the first time you're hearing this. I am so fucking sorry, but I have to admit my truth. I became friends with Jackie back in 2016, 2017. We were just like in the same like Twitter group chat, became pretty good friends, met through Hip Hop Heads Twitter, like a surprising amount of people that are on this podcast now, either in the podcast or a part of like the Discord community. We met through HHH Twitter, which is weird and crazy and wild and embarrassing. But Jackie was someone who we would text pretty often. But there were definitely times with Jackie, and this is something I love about Jackie, and I think even she knows this. Jackie can be such an overwhelming person sometimes, and I think that's what makes her contributions so important to this podcast, is that you give Jackie a topic, and she can just go the fuck off. And there was a point where I was texting Jackie, and I was like, okay, I think people on the podcast would like Jackie. And I would like Jackie to stop texting me so much. So I proposed to Jackie to join the Indieheads podcast because I was tired of getting texted by her so much, so she could spread the wealth out to our members of the podcast. And it is a decision that I do not regret to this day. And it's crazy because Jackie is not only one of my best friends, Jackie's one of my best friends out here in LA. Just someone that I see on the regular like every week, which is crazy. But here we are. So Jackie, I apologize for telling my truth. Take it away.
Hello, listeners of the Indieheads Podcast. It's me, Jackie, DJ Horse Jeans. And I was gonna like write something, like actually prepare thoughts and maybe not try to ramble for once on this podcast, but I've been really busy this week. I just moved into a new place and I've been working all week and going out. And so I haven't been putting it off. I've been thinking about it all week, but I've really been struggling about like what song I could pick. It's for the prompt for this episode, talking about a song or an album from this podcast history, something we've talked about at one point on the podcast that we want to bring up now again as we arrive on our 200th episode, which, wow, 200 episodes, but we'll get to that. I was trying to decide what song I wanted to pick for this episode, and I was torn because, like, on one hand, I could pull back to, like, the earlier era of this podcast where we used to talk about indie music. Like, this podcast is obviously, I'm sure you listen to the podcast now, you know that we've changed in format a lot over time. We used to be a more traditional, like, we talk about news and new releases and indie music type of podcast. And over time, our format has morphed and changed, like the thing in the movie, The Thing, and become what it is now, the beautiful thing it is now. But I could go back and talk about, like, and even now still we talk about all kinds of music that we love, and I could pull from some of my favorite albums of all time that I've had the chance to talk about on this podcast. Like, unfortunately, a lot of these episodes are before I came out, so I don't like listening to them anymore, but we've had some really great conversations about Frank Ocean's Blonde and, like, Radiohead albums, and, like, some of my favorite albums of all time, some of the music that means the most to me as a person. I could just cheat and I could do something like that. I could also do any number of songs from the newer era of our podcast that mean a lot to us, like Blurry, or any number of songs by Creed or 311, or, you know, like, there's all kinds of stuff I could spin off of that, you know, all kinds of tangents I could go down. But I've jumbled between a bunch of different picks, you know, like trying to reflect different aspects of the story, and I found it too hard. Like, our podcast is too unwieldy of a story to tell in one anecdote. And so there was only really one song that I really could have picked for this episode. I know some people are currently dreading that this is about to happen, but I unfortunately have to break it to you that I'm once again talking about Pistol by Modest Mouse, baby. I know whoever's listening to the podcast right now is screaming, shrieking in horror, whatever. I'm not going to go on for 10 minutes about Pistol by Modest Mouse this time. However, I want to talk about the song Pistol by Modest Mouse because I think my exploration into that song, which I must add was at, like, the peak of kind of what I would describe as just, like, nationwide mental illness in terms of what was going on at the time, but also specifically me. There was a lot. It was not, that was not, if you're shocked to learn this, not a particularly mentally healthy period of time in my life. And so maybe, yes, I got a little too invested into the Pistol bit. However, I'm still fucking fascinated by that song. I still think about that song all the time. And I think it is an apt metaphor for both our podcast and, more importantly, like, the way that this podcast has welcomed me in and allowed me to do my bullshit in the most unrestrained way possible. And I just need to... Oh my god. Now, at some point I'm going to get emotional. Not quite yet, but the first person I have to thank is Maddie, because, like, I wouldn't be doing this podcast without Maddie. I wouldn't have the job that I have now without Maddie. And I literally don't know what would happen in my life if I hadn't met him, because it's just, like, the story of my life is so intertwined now with him, because, like, he was the one who invited me to become a full-time cast member on the podcast because I expressed interest. I was a listener of the podcast technically before I was a member of the podcast. The podcast started before I got involved with it, but I had become friends with Maddie through Twitter, just, I believe, through hip hop heads follow chains, one or another, or just through mutual Twitter follower friends of ours. And I think that him allowing me to come on this podcast and just be on my bullshit, but also have, like, an outlet for, like, the things I was passionate about, like, obviously led me to being in having the opportunities that I'm having now, which, like, I've had the most insane year of my life, and I'm so incredibly grateful for the fact that without this podcast I wouldn't be here now, and I get to be one part of this increasingly unwieldy, increasingly large cast of people, and is why I have a hard time explaining to people what my podcast is about. Like, I have a hard time, besides that it's a podcast about music, and that's just kind of the easy way I get out of it, but, like, explaining what our podcast is, how all these people know each other, why there are so many people in the podcast, what, like, the tone of our podcast is, what the, like, explain, and that's why I just trying to explain it to outsiders becomes increasingly difficult as it increasingly folds in on itself, but also as we just have this increasingly wide cast of incredible, funny, smart, like amazing people involved with it, not only in like the direct, like quote unquote official cast members, but like the thing about the Indieheads podcast is it's kind of like the band The Armed, where like if you want to be part of the Indieheads podcast, you can just kind of weasel your way in there. Like, welcome to the Indieheads podcast is basically what I'm saying. But I really appreciate this band of people that so much, and I appreciate so much the way that we have become this weird second family, and the way that especially. And now here's where I cry. Oh my god. Okay. The girls, Rose and Lily and Nat, have become 3 of my closest friends in the whole world. And there is no way I would have gotten through the last couple years without them. Like, especially Lily, who was literally the first person I ever came out to and talked to about being trans, and has become one of my best friends in the whole world, and someone I consider like the older sister I never had. And I just love everyone in this podcast so much, and also love how wide-ranging and insane and sprawling of an endeavor this thing has become, and just trying to explain it to someone not inside that little universe is impossible, much like the song Pistol by Modest Mouse, because no matter how there's so many elements, and they're all so loud and aggressive and talking over each other, the insane ugly guitar solo, that's me going on too long, but like, and all of it together, it's not like it meshes all together into something that makes sense. It's something that is I still think pretty anti-audience at times as far as podcasts goes, but you know what, there are some people that really seem to like it, and that makes me really happy, because I appreciate so much the small community that has formed around our podcast, and I appreciate those people as much as I appreciate the people that are my friends as part of the podcast. And I think it is all just one beautiful, horrible, undeniably compelling object that we have become, and we are Modest Mouse Pistol. I got that pistol in the car. Happy 200th episode. Thank you again to everyone. Thank you again to Maddie. I love you. Next segment.
Thank you, Jackie. I just need you to know that as soon as you mentioned Pistol, I literally just said, God damn it, out loud. And then when you had your very emotional speech about how much this podcast means to you and the gals chat, all that shit, and then you brought it back to Pistol, I said, God damn it, once again. But yeah, there we are. We got some more folks coming up. Up next, calling audible, Gavin. What the fuck did Gavin say? Let's find out.
Hello, baby. Hey, just kidding. It's not the Big Bopper. It's Gavin. Here to talk about an album or a song, or I don't really remember what Manny wanted us to do. But I thought it'd be appropriate to take a trip in the time machine back to 2018, or was it 2017? I don't remember. Time's not real anymore. But the first album I was brought on to talk about on this podcast was Jeff Rosenstock's Post that came out. I think it was like New Year's. I'm gonna be honest, y'all. I don't remember anything. I was working at Target, and I listened to this album for the first time while I was working in the dairy section of Target, and I listened to it in the cooler, and I just didn't go on the sales floor for like as long as the album was, which is definitely not allowed, but it was towards the end of my time working at that establishment, so I didn't care. And just I couldn't really hear it because I was listening on shitty wired headbuds that I bought at like 7-Eleven, and I was in the cooler, so like the fans were going because you have to keep the milk below like 30 degrees or whatever. I don't know. So it was kind of like a bad first experience listening to that album, but even then I was like, oh, this is cool. I don't know the last time I listened to this record, to be honest. I don't have much thoughts on what it means to me. in the present day. It's kind of a reaction to the Trump administration, and I'm just kind of not ready to come to a conclusion on that 4 years of my life or reflect on it really right now. I'm kind of rocking with Joey B, if you know what I mean. Shouts out to we love him, the King Joey B, 46. We all love him. I'm speaking for everyone on the podcast. But so I think I still like that record. I'm kind of immediately just hopping the USA as a standout on the record because it is the intro, the longest song. It's not the intro. Laura Stevenson did a voicemail. But it's the first song. It's pretty long, and then Let Them Win's the outro, and it's also long. And those are just both songs about Trump that, whatever. But it's a good record. I might listen to it. I probably should have done my homework and listened to it before I start talking about it. But yeah. So that was what I was brought in to talk about. But it's kind of crazy, the evolution of this podcast. I don't. Oh, that's my alarm. My mozzarella sticks are ready in the oven. So, hey, babe, can you get the mozzarella sticks out? Okay, thank you. Yummy, delicious. Check out mozzarella sticks if you're not familiar. But when I brought on this podcast, we talked about indie music a lot, and it was that was the year I listened to everything that year, man. I have a list of like 300 albums I listened to that year, and now I think I listened to like 10 albums last year, and I think I've listened to less than that this year. I don't keep up anymore. I'm 27 years old, and I'm just vibing. I'm having fun with my friends. This podcast has kind of turned into the have fun with your friends podcast, and I think more people listen to it now than ever. So I'm not gonna make any meta commentary on what we should do or what you, the listener, likes. You can tell us what you like. I would love to hear it. But I'm enjoying these past few years so much. Just having fun with Maddie and Alex and everyone else. Not just those two. I mean, those are the two I spend the most of my time talking to, of course. But we've all kind of come together with the same sort of It's not always like a nostalgic look at butt rock or busted or whatever. There's some pretty fun contemporary stuff that we've been doing. The song I really want to talk about is "Oh Ain't It Shaved" by Brian Pumper, which I think is the best song we've ever talked about on this podcast, and I think it's a Patreon exclusive. So I'm sorry to talk about a song that's a Patreon exclusive, but if you don't pay, you should pay to listen to that episode. Adult entertainment contemporary. I think it's the best thing we've ever done, but I'm biased. Me and Max worked hard on it. But "Oh And It's Shaved" is I don't know if there's a piece of art that operates in the same space as that one, even though we talked about 10 songs that we're trying to. Just the lyrics in that song, they say if you gave a bunch of monkeys a typewriter, they could write like Shakespeare or whatever. I don't think if you gave monkeys a typewriter ever, they'd be able to come up with "Oh Ain't It Shaved" by Brian Pumper. I think only Brian Pumper can come up with some of those lyrics. And just, sorry, Jeff, a man whose music I love and have loved since I was a teenager, to immediately start talking about Brian Pumper in this. But I love Jeff Rosenstock post, and go check out the music video for "Oh Ain't It Shaved" by Brian Pumper. And if you like that, subscribe to Patreon and listen to adult entertainment contemporary, because this podcast isn't short of great episodes. Obviously, if you're a listener, you know that, but I think that's the best one. Shouts out to Will for Thrill, the goat. Shouts out to Maddie. I sometimes I wonder if my goofs at Maddie's expense come off as mean, but Maddie is our fearless leader, and I love Maddie. And Maddie spent a beautiful night in my home, and I'd love to do that again. But Maddie's the best. Maddie's the reason for the season, as they say. So thank you, Maddie, for allowing me to be on this podcast and introducing me to this beautiful group of people, and including Brian Pumper. I'm including Brian in that group of people. And I thank you, the listener, for giving a shit enough to listen to 100 or 200. I don't know the anniversary we're doing right now, but thank you for caring and listening. I love you. I'm going to let someone else talk now. Bye.
Thank you, Gavin. I'll probably get fuck it. I'll just say it now. I mean, the current direction this podcast has taken, it's 100% because of Gavin. Like, while I was the one that came up with the block number ones, it was Gavin's, like, it was his energy and the direction he took that series. That's the reason why we're doing what we're doing today. Gavin is one of the funniest people that I know. And there's definitely times where I gotta admit, there's times where he's mean to me as a joke, and it hurts a little bit. But at the end of the day, I know it comes from a place of love, and I love Gavin so much. He is, again, him and Alex. This is not anything against the other cast members, because of course I love them all and I appreciate them all. But I feel like, me, Gavin, Alex, that trio is just like. It is the most fun I have doing this. Like, it's always fun doing this podcast, but like when it's just when it's us three and you throw in some other people in the mix, like, it's just beautiful. It's just magic. We're just cooking. We're cooking so hard, and hopefully we'll have another series between us three next year. But I love Gavin so much. One of the funniest, if not the funniest person that I know. And I love you, Gavin. But anyways, up next, let's go to Natalie. So let's see what Natalie had to say.
Hi, this is Natalie, and my transmission for this very, very special episode that we have here is going to be about probably the most important album that I feel like I talked about since I joined the podcast, and that is Fiona Apple's landmark surprise fifth record, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. My reasons for picking this are kind of multi-layered. First and foremost, I think it's the one I wanted to go with because it was the first really serious album discussion, at least serious recent album discussion, since I joined the podcast in mid-2019. I did some of those retrospectives that we did for the decade list, and those were really wonderful too, but it was this one that felt really special because it was this big new landmark record. And me and Rose and Lily were all eager to hop onto it. We were all commiserating in Gal's chat about it. It was wonderful to have Britt involved too, because Britt brought a lot of her own perspective into the situation as well. And it was just a really tremendous discussion because it felt like the first time on the podcast where I could be very vulnerable. It was a very important year for me. I had just started taking HRT the year before. Shortly before the album came out, Jackie came out to the three of us and was talking with us, and we were all kind of like using it as an excuse to bond with each other because Rose and I were still new to the podcast. And so Gal's chat became this kind of refuge for us where we were just using it to talk a lot about our own experiences because we were all having somewhat of a rough time around then in terms of just coping with the pandemic and our own isolations and just having a small little circle separate from everything else where we could just talk about our own experiences or how we were handling transness or just different albums that spoke to different aspects of our womanhood or transness, or even movies, because we were bringing things like the Black Dresses album at the time, Peaceful as Hell, into the mix. We were bringing up movies that we were thinking were very trans, and that's how we started ending up doing our like little movie nights that we've been doing together. And it was just a really wonderful space for a number of reasons, not only because I loved having a space where I felt like I could actually have a meaningful sort of impact on the girls in my life, my trans sisters, but in a way where I thought it was just really nice to rely on them to help me out and to have them be such a pillar in a really weird, rough, difficult period of my life where things were very much in flux and things kept changing. But the album discussion itself was one that I was really, really, really kind of struck by. It was one of the first episodes I think I was on where I felt like I did a good job with talking about what it meant to me, especially like being a woman who isn't necessarily viewed as a particular kind of like docile or not really a woman who will let people step on her, which is kind of what you need to do in order to be trans to survive. And so being on that episode was really wonderful because Britt and Rose and Lily were all bringing their own similar readings of it into the mix. But it felt really tremendous because it was part of a moment in a number of different ways. It was a moment in kind of the early 2020s music history. It was a moment in this kind of burgeoning, expanding friend group and this close, tight-knit circle that us four trans girls started carving out for each other. And it was also just, it felt like a very important landmark for me in my early days of transition to be like, here's a place where I can spill my guts about what this means to me and how important this album is to me, and I can tie it into where I am in this early stage of transition. And so it was just, I don't know, it was I think about that and I've been getting kind of teary-eyed. We've been talking in Gals Chat about how tearful some of the stuff that we've been recording for this episode is making us, primarily Lily, who I know is probably going to have something very emotional up her sleeve. But it's, I don't know, it really kind of does hit me in a sort of way where it feels like the part of the podcast I have the most emotional attachment to is this very sincere moment and thought where I've really kind of latched on to what this moment means for the podcast beyond the podcast as a means for connection and making meaningful memories and building powerful bonds with the people that you love. And that really is what it feels like to me. And so yeah, it was wonderful just having us three trans girls on that episode and gushing about it, because you know that okay, wait a minute. Okay. So Jackie had to sit that episode out because she didn't want to out herself and wanted to let others who were out speak authentically about themselves. So that means of the four trans girls, there were three of us on there. And the Fetch the Bolt Cutters, the title track is track number 3. Well, let me do some digging here. Let me pull up the album here. Okay, so it has 13 tracks. That has the 3 in there. That has the 3. The last track, On I Go, that has 3 words in it. And for her, that track, both the words have 3 letters. So that's okay. I started making this connection 6 minutes in, 6 is divisible by 3. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's see here. Oh, fuck, fuck me. Okay. This was also Fiona's 3rd consecutive album that made it into the Billboard Top 10 on its opening week. Oh, God. How fucking deep does this go? There were... Oh, fuck. Shit, now that I think about it. There were 3 cast members when I got added. No, that's not how I want to say. I was part of 3 cast members being added because it was me and Rose and the short-lived podcast co-host formerly known as Delaney. So there were 3 people there, and how far can we go? Shit, that's right. The Currents episode, the fucking Currents episode. There were 3 people on that. The most infamous early episode of the podcast. There were fuck. God. Okay. So for those not in the know, a couple episodes ago on the It's the Same Fucking Song Again podcast, we discovered a conspiracy in which we found out that the number 3 links everything together. It's linked Napoleon the 14th. It's linked Silento. It's linked a number of just different artists that we've talked about over the years. And I have a feeling that knowing that 3 has been part of my podcast existence since I've started, it has something to do with me coming on. I've brought this on. This is all me. This is all the harbinger of everything that I have put together on this podcast. It's all been building up to this. I mean, fuck. The first appearance I made on the podcast was Pitchfork Fest, a festival that takes place over 3 days. I need to get to the bottom of this. Clearly there's more work to be done, and clearly there's... Oh, sweet fucking Christ. The next big episode. This is 200. And the next one's 300. I'm going to come back with more. I'm going to come back with more data. I need to report my findings. So, stay tuned. I'm sure everybody else has something really wonderful or terrible, who fucking knows. But I will be back in 100 episodes. I will see you in 100 episodes. And we'll uncover the truth once and for all.
What the fuck? What the hell? Thank you, Natalie. Natalie is one of the smartest people we have on the podcast, but I think I think she might be going too far here. I mean, like, what? And I feel like I'm partially to blame for this 3 conspiracy being on that episode and uncovering some things with her. But yeah. Anyways, up next we have Max. Max is one of our newest members of the podcast. They joined sometime last year, but they've been a part of the Podsphere for quite some time. So Max, what you got to say, brother?
I'm going to use this opportunity, thank you, Maddie, to talk about No Dogs Allowed by Sydney Gesh, which longtime friends of mine know is probably one of the most formative albums to me and is really the only choice that I could properly give for this prompt. It came around at a time when I was first really starting to discover music in a holistic album by album format, and I wasn't listening to anything special at the time. It was a lot of like Indieheads essentials and whatnot, getting the basics down so I could expand on what I liked from there, and I could instantly tell that this was an album that would be formative to me for a long time, because in my playlist days there was a lot of inklings of stuff that would become formative to my taste later in life. Unfortunately, one of those is like LCD Sound System. a striking example of that. And a lot of those playlists actually had twee music, and I didn't know anything of the concept at the time. I would just throw those in a playlist and go on my very merry way. And when I heard No Dogs Allowed for the first time, it was like, oh, this is very similar to a lot of music that I've liked in the past, and I think it does a really good job of that. And also, for the first time in my life, I'm starting to like derive meaning from albums. And then having an album when I'm 19 years old and a kind of aimless college student, having an album with a lot of good songs hit directly on topics of college listlessness and whatnot. It feels very prescient, and an album for the time in my life that I'm really happy came out when it did, because I don't think any other time in my life it would have the impact that it did. I think it's a perfect bedroom pop album. I listened to it yesterday just to make sure I feel that way. There isn't a bad song on the track. I think the lyrics are clever without going overboard and making me roll my eyes, which I think is a good thing, but also it's so lodged into my memory core that I'm not sure if that's just my bias showing. I hope she comes out with something soon, and I'm not really expecting much, but shout outs to Sydney Gish for her work in the bedroom pop community. She couldn't save it, but by God, she tried. And Maddie said that these could be up to 10 minutes, and I knew that I was only going to talk about Sydney Gish for a couple minutes, but I still wanted to give her flowers. But I decided to tier list singer-songwriters by how likely I would be to accept a cigarette from them if I was drunk, because I thought this was an interesting topic, and I didn't want to like tier list singer-songwriters based on, I don't know, a more objective criteria, I guess. I'd feel weird about doing it, but this feels like a good topic, and singer-songwriters are probably one of my more listened to genres, and probably one of the only ones I actually like will listen to sincerely. So we're just going to start off with the nightmare tier, people that under no circumstance would I want to share a cigarette with. I don't think there are going to be any surprises here, but it's St. Vincent, Mitski, Grimes, and the guy from Cheekface. Mitski seems like a terrible vibe these days. I don't think she's ever going to give me a cigarette, and that's okay. But I do not want to smoke with her at all. Annie Clark would be. I'm not a cigarette smoker, by the way, just to clarify. But, you know, there are situations where if I am drinking and someone says, hey, do you want a cigarette, Max? I'll give them a little wink, a little nod, and say, you know, if you pull my finger, let's do it. St. Vincent, pretty explanatory. Grimes, pretty explanatory. Those three would be like a nightmare triumvirate of like a sig circle. I want no part of that. I'd maybe like a fly on the wall. If I could listen to their conversations as a podcast, I would take it. The guy from Cheekface, yeah. I mean, yeah. The next tier is the clout tier, which I'm just saying, like, I don't think I'd have a great time, and I don't like them very much at this point, but I'm going to do it to say I did it. And that's going to be Lucy Dacus, Phoebe Bridgers, Father John Misty, Lana, and Sufjan. I think Father John Misty would probably be a better hang than Father John Misty's persona implies, but it's still not a lot for me. All of these people, Lucy Dacus obviously isn't on the same level as the other three. I mean, I like Sufjan, but like, there's no other place I could put him. Lana's pretty insufferable to me, but that not insufferable enough not to accept a cig. I think that'd be a fun story to have. Phoebe Bridgers, same thing for the most part. And Lucy Dacus, I just don't think we'd vibe very well, but you know, I'm gonna just do it to do it. And next up we have the dare tier. First up is going to be Lindsay Jordan. If Lindsay Jordan offers me a cigarette, I am smacking the pack out of her hands and saying, no, we are protecting your lungs. Stay away from that. And then I have Georgia Mack and Courtney Barnett, which I thought about these at different times. And now that they're both here, it feels like I'm just profiling Australians with bangs. Because I don't know if they smoke a lot of cigarettes or smoke too many cigarettes. I'm just assuming that much, but they kind of look like they do. So if either of you are listening to this, I'm sorry. My next tier is would accept, but I don't think we'd have a lot to say. And I don't think I'll spend a lot of time on this one because I think all of them will make sense. That's Phil Elverum, Lamelda, Julian Baker, and Florist. I don't have a lot to say about any of those artists. Lamelda's very good. Probably my favorite of the four. But I think we'd both get a little too introspective. Catching a vibe tier is where I think we really start getting into the meat. And I think all of these people would be very fun hangs, either based on, I guess I can only go off Twitter persona. I guess I've hung out with Ethel Kane for 5 seconds. Shout out if you're listening. Hello. But the catching a vibe tier, we got Tomberlin at the top of it. Tomberlin seems like a very fun hang. I don't have a lot to say about any of these things. I don't know why I'm even like describing it, but we're talking. So Tomberlin, Ethel Kane, not a massive Ethel Kane fan yet, but both times I met her, she was a vibe, and I'd assume it would continue to be a vibe. Bill Callahan seems very cool. Haley Hendricks, I think if I wasn't also from Portland, we wouldn't say a lot, but because of that, I think we'd have a great conversation, a real melding of the minds, if you will. And then we got Wiseblood, Julia Jacqueline, and Soccer Mommy, who I don't have a lot to say about, but all seem like cool people. And then topping it off, I have the This Would Be a Movie tier. And that's going to be Faye Webster, Adrienne Lenker, and Sydney Gish, which are very biased. And if I liked any of the artists in the tier below more, they could easily move up to This Would Be a Movie tier. I think Faye Webster seems like the number one pick here on people to vibe with if they offered a cigarette. She just seems very cool. Obviously, my conversation with John Webster kind of influences that, but the Webster clan seems like a very generally nice and chill group of people. And if Faye is offering me that drag, ooh, I'm going to take it. That's all I got, though. Thank you to everyone who's listened to this podcast for like 200 episodes or even one. That's crazy. It's really wild. Make sure to thank Maddie. Maddie does so much work.
Thank you, Max, for your wonderful contribution to episode 200. But coming up next, our final solo transmit. Well, actually, no, never mind. I'm getting ready to do one. I get our final solo transmission that is not me. We got Dylan. So let's hear what Dylan had to say.
All right, what's up, Maddie? Hello. You're getting this as an iPhone voice memo while I refill my water bottle less than 90 minutes before your changed new deadline because I can't actually meet normal deadlines. So you're just getting this. Hello, how you doing? Apparently everyone's bullying you, so I'm gonna be the last one to not bully you, and I hope that's okay. And for anyone who wanted to hear me talk shit about Maddie, I won't talk shit about Maddie because he's the glorious podfather and I love him very much. He's done a lot of work that deserves to be recognized for a 200th podcast episode for a podcast that's been going on for like 7 years now, something like that. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Love Streams by Tim Hecker very briefly, because it's a great album. I love Mr. Hex. But also, it was kind of the first record that I remember connecting with people with in the old, like, Skype chat when I first joined it. Like, Love Streams I think it had leaked, like, a couple months at the start of 2016, and then I was added to the chat, and then I joined the pod, and Love Streams was like the first record that I distinctly remember connecting with Maddie. Just listening to it, talking about it, being one of the big defenders of Mr. Hex along with Lily, I think. And that just kind of carries some value to me, some emotional value. because I've met some wonderful people through this podcast, and seeing that you are all actual people with lives outside of my computer screen makes me very happy. And I'm very privileged and honored to be a part of a group that has ebbed and flowed over the years and is just a very high quality amount of individuals. And it's all thanks to Love Streams, the only album that Mr. Hecker ever put out on 4AED, because that is a label that does not have their fucking shit together. If you can't have the ambient godfather of now year. Anyway, point being, that's a good record. I love it very much. I loved that was kind of the first record that I was able to connect with y'all and talk with and build relationships and friendships that have still endured to this day. And it makes me very happy. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you for adding me to this chat and giving me space to ramble and not know what the next word is going to come out of my mouth is. Thanks.
Thank you, Dill, for your transmission. I love you too, buddy. Come on the pod more. But I say that knowing that anytime we have you on the pod, it's because we're unintentionally torturing you. So we'll try to find something more in your zone. But coming up next, of course, that is the end of the solo transmissions that I have. That people didn't turn shit on time, so that's all you get. But so behind my back. Well, not really behind my back. I guess this is something that I was vaguely aware of, but did not fully know the full extent. So a few days ago, I was asked by Gavin and Max to make a topster of my favorite albums of all time. And here's the thing. I don't like doing all-time topsters because I just don't, like, for me, I'm very much a music listener that is in the moment. I don't look back too often. I mean, I do, but obviously, like, in terms of, like, all-time, it's just such a gargantuan task that I'm like, I'm out, you know? Like, I'll talk about my favorite records of all time in, like, a vague sense, but, you know, putting it all in a list, yeah, no. Like, so, because the last time I did this, I think it was, like, 2017, maybe? It was a long-ass time, but Gavin and Max were asking, and I was like, nope, because I knew they were going to be doing something with it, and I did not like it. But Jackie, God damn it, Jackie was like, hey, you should do it. And so I trust my friend Jackie. I love her, and she tricked me because coming up next, we have AJ, Gavin, Max, and Will for Thrill as they take a look at my top 42 topster and proceed to the original tip was to tier list it, but really they're just going album by album and then making fun of me for albums that I like because all these albums have very strong personal connections to me, and they're just mean. They're very mean about these albums that I love that mean a lot to me in my lifetime. And I just, yeah, this is the very, if you like me getting bullied on this podcast, oh boy, this is some heavy bullying material here, but I will let these four gentlemen take it away.
I love this one.
It's my favorite Joyce Manor song.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indieheads Podcast. I am your host, Matty Monroe, a.k.a. Recon EG, a.k.a. Monrovian Prince, and on this week's episode, we have...
You just sound like Obama.
Yeah, a.k.a. Young Pussy Getta.
Yeah,
Well,
they're pretty much
Maddie's trying to do too.
yeah, they're pretty much the same guy, right? Obama and Matty.
Yeah.
Oh, let me be clear. Dean Blunt is the most influential artist of all time. Oh, let me be clear. Kid A, not as revolutionary as the Money Store.
That's facts, Obama.
The Matty Monroe Barack Obama blend summer playlist would be a thing to behold, but that's not what we're here to do today.
It's just all Mitski.
That actually is what we're here to do.
Yeah, a little
That
bit.
kind of is what we're here to do. This is Matty's summer playlist.
The Maddie, a.k.a. Obama summer playlist would be the most devastating thing to happen to bisexual women since Snail Mail called out Phoebe Bridgers on Instagram.
8:52 a.m. is a very meaningful time to people.
Exactly.
Yesterday, I was asking around the Indieheads universe to see if Maddie had ever posted a topster, because obviously it's the 200th episode special and we're talking about albums that are important to us. But nothing is more important to me than the opinions of my friend and our Indieheads podcast leader, Maddie Monroe. And I wanted to get an insight into his mind, and I wanted to talk about what he loves to talk about and see how my thoughts line up with his. But he didn't have a topster. And shout out to Jackie for doing the legwork to convince Maddie to make a topster yesterday. Because now we have a 42 album topster to tier list between the four of us. Obviously, we have Gav Max Enterprises here and special guests AJ and Wilford Thrill. How are you guys doing tonight?
That's right. We're vibing. Everybody's gone off that LD tonight. We're liquid death. Death up.
BD and LD tonight. That's this combo of Bad Daddies and Liquid Death.
Yeah. Yes. We're all off that Bad Daddy's Burger Bar. We collectively went to 3 different Bad Daddy's Burgers bars.
AJ and I went to I don't know if Will went to Bad Daddy's, but AJ
I
and
did
I
not
went
go to Bad Daddy's.
Well, Will is the baddest daddy.
Wherever Will ate was Bad Daddy's Burger Bar.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've never even heard of Bad Daddies, actually. Can you all tell me about this Bad Daddies?
It's kind of gas. You
know
could
what Red
make your own
Robin is,
burger.
Will?
Yeah.
I assume you know
familiar.
what Red Robin is. Yeah. It's basically Red Robin, but the fries aren't steak. They're not bottomless, and there's no cheeky Robin mascot.
What kind of fries are we talking here, then?
Any kind you want. They got curly, they got steak, they got French.
Sweet potato.
I just like a down the line fry with a nice.
Tonight I ordered onion rings on the side. I got 3.5 onion rings. They were big. But,
all right. Yeah. AJ put ketchup on his onion rings, which to me is.
What do you put on an onion ring?
They don't need nothing, brother.
They don't need nothing but ranch before ketchup for sure.
Oh, nah. They only had ketchup. I had ketchup and I had Thousand Island, so I wasn't going to dip those in Thousand Island.
The sauce that they their in-house sauce is kind of weird.
The Bad Daddy sauce. Yeah.
What kind of sauce is that?
It's
like Thousand Island for sure.
I feel like every burger restaurant in America has their secret sauce, which is just a blend of like mayo and Thousand Island.
I keep looking at this list and getting pissed off. We gotta get into it.
Yeah, we should probably get into that. Do we want to like start from the bottom, or do we want to like kind of create like? We just want to pick?
I don't know if you saw it today, but speaking of starting from the bottom, let's just say a little rapper that started from the bottom is having beef with the internet's busiest music nerd.
Oh my god, let's get started.
He's busy because he's leaving all these rappers on red.
This is a little beef roundup.
Yeah.
Sponsored by Bad Daddies.
Reviewing the best and worst beef. Yeah.
Drake took the L. Anthony Fantano, rare W.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Facts.
Like I put in the chat, until I hear what Drake thinks of the new Muse album, I'm abstaining from siding with anyone on this beef, because Anthony Fantano called the new Muse album not good. And even if Drake says it's a 1 out of 10, that means he likes it more than Fantano, and I'm on his side.
I don't know if Drake has probably listened to Muse, right? Drake has probably heard of Muse.
They've probably played at the same festival.
Yeah.
What do you think Drake's favorite Muse song is? Like Knights of Sidonia, Resistance?
No.
Supermassive black hole.
What if I feel like Drake might be a kind of a sleeper prog rock guy?
Hell no.
Hell no.
Hell no.
Sometimes you just want to say things. All right.
There's like five artists total on Maddie's top list.
One of the things I wanted to say is that it is incredibly brave to put multiple albums from the same artist on a 40 album topster.
I think every Death Grips album is on here.
Yeah,
there's a chance. And I don't think that's Maddie slander. It's just I've never been able to do it myself, even though it's definitely been true at points.
Yeah, it's kind of like music is my life, and I love so many different bands.
Yeah,
exactly. And I love so many different types of music too.
Okay, let's start here.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Because the internet number 5.
Yeah, I wanted to start at the same place, AJ. We just need to establish F. We'll put F tier. It can be hell tier because the internet is is going there.
I don't
I don't get it.
I disagree.
Really?
You can like that album totally fine, but wherever you put it on your chart, I will be like carefully combing through every album that comes after it to be like, you think Because the Internet's better than that, huh? So putting it like, if it was number 1, I would respect it more because I was like, right, that would be your favorite album of all time. But number 5 is just like, you thought about that placement, like you carefully weighed this against all those other albums, and it's crazy.
It is. I'm not even sure I've ever listened to this album in full, just because I wasn't around at the time. And
You did not go to college on the East Coast.
Yeah,
trust me, I heard these songs. It's just like I never like
I was
sat down
obsessed
and
with the song
said,
for the entirety of 2014, so I can't.
If you have Because the Internet on your list and you don't have Acid Rap on your list, you're just lying to yourself because you're like, that's selective memory.
I feel like Donald Glover is just staring us down right now.
Yeah, I don't like the vibe he's giving off on the cover of this record.
He's looking at us like, Matty put me here. He made my album cover really big.
Can you believe this shit?
Number 5. It could have been a tier down. It could have been a little bit smaller.
Like, obviously, Childish Gambino's impact in the mid 2000s was like a Stranger Things-esque phenomenon where you really had to be there to understand. Because like right now, he's like, he's in Atlanta and like music comes out, but like he was that dude for a second.
He was.
This is America.
Don't get it.
You know?
Yeah, that was crazy.
I can close my eyes. Like it's a dartboard. I can close my eyes and just open them and look somewhere at Maddie's chart and get upset about something.
What was that tweet that was like a Fetty Wap and ISIS ran shit that one summer? What if we did This is America and Hobo Johnson ran shit that one summer?
Crazy, yeah.
Well, no. This is America came out in like September because I remember. Like,
no, it was May.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I think WFT's right on this one. It was like a song of the summer, song of the year type thing.
Okay, this is even.
Was it 2017 or 2016 though? Is the thing I can't remember.
2017.
Okay,
It's 2018.
2018.
This is America.
No, because I took a writing for the media course in college, which would have been
writing for the media. This is America.
It was the season finale of Saturday Night Live when he was double dutying, hosting.
Right.
Oh yeah, May 5th, 2018, the same weekend that Solo, a Star Wars story, came out.
Okay, then this is even crazier because I took writing for the media in fall of that year, and we watched the This Is America music video and like discussed it. And like my professor was very cool, but
did you like it? Was he down with it?
In retrospect, listening to that music video 4 months late was crazy. I was never on board with that one to begin with. And I guess listening to Redbone through the walls of the house party or whatever, that had its moment.
This Is America isn't even a good song. Can we talk about this?
It never was.
The music video is fine, but it's not a good song. It's barely a song.
No.
What else do we... Okay.
We need to get back to Maddie.
Everyone's allowed to have their favorite album of all time. This is a good album. Maddie, it's fine that Maddie has this at number 1. I'm already mad at number 2. Joyce Manor, of all things that will soon grow tired. Easily the worst Joyce Manor album. Come on, Maddie. What are you doing?
I'm going to not try to interject too much during this awful segment of the podcast, but I just have to say that I'm doing me, okay? I'm doing me, AJ Moser. All right, it's on my body forever. I'm doing me. Fuck you.
Smile.
I don't like this band at all, so I have no
The
opinion.
Smile Sessions by the Beach Boys at number 3. Not even a real album. Never came out. L. Brian Wilson. L. Then the best Joyce Manor album at number 4. Just barely above Childish Gambino Because the Internet. Just L after L in this top 5 right here.
Yeah, this is this is Be Nice to Maddie hour.
Yeah.
But also I feel like the album is there just because Maddie has a brand on himself of the album. So it's like, and Thanks is probably like top 20, like a top 20 album of mine as well. But
ask Maddie to name one song off this Joyce Manor record. He can't do it.
I wouldn't put money on that, but
So who wants to start with number 6? Tell me what album's in number 6.
Okay.
Just anybody go ahead and read that out.
Yeah, I'll nod at it. Yeah, sure.
This is the most insane one to me. At number 7.
It's good, but like if Maddie had just put the powers that be, I would have been like, this is probably his best take yet. But he only went with disc 1 of the powers that be, and I think every other Death Grips album, the good ones at least, except for side 2 of the powers that be, are on this list, which is crazy. He's got Redacted on the Moon at number 6, which is a great listen in and of itself. But just do the whole powers that be, because that's the record, my guy.
What do you want to? Oh man, I can't believe I'm asking. Put a couple beers in me, and I'm asking questions about Death Grips. Would you like to explain what that means? What the power is?
Oh yeah, okay. So I mean, like they released this
on the Moon.
They released Redacted on the Moon and Jenny Death. Well, they released Redacted on the Moon. They said this is the first half of our last album called The Powers That Be. And then we had to wait like a year and a half for Jenny Death, which was disc 2, which is fantastic. And I think The Powers That Be is probably the best Death Grips record overall in and of itself. But the first half, Redacted on the Moon, is very like short, very punchy. It's got some great songs. They all like use Bjork vocals tuned up as instrumentals, which is kind of crazy. It's great, but having it as your highest rated Death Grips project overall as itself is crazy. Kind of wild to do. Speaking of things that are wild to do, A Strange Ranger, No Light in Heaven at number 7, right after Redacted on the Moon.
Was fine. This
album's fine. Too. I love Strange Ranger. I loved them before they got canceled and had to change their name because of the woke SJW liberals.
What is their new name?
No, Strange Ranger is the new name.
Their old name was Sioux Falls.
Their old name was Sioux Falls, which is like a indigenous tribe.
Yeah.
Well, it's also a city, and I think that's what he named it after. But then,
they had two great records, and then they decided to get a little experimental. And I was like thinking fondly of this record actually today because I was listening to the new Young Jesus, and this and the new Young Jesus are like 2 records of a piece because they're like two traditionally indie rock bands who decided to go experimental and electronic. But this one's just a little too wild for me. This one's a little too noisy. I don't like it that much. But I respect Maddie for liking it and calling it his album of the year last year. But the 7th best record of all time? My brother, you just haven't listened to enough records.
Hey, buddy, where are the goddamn Beatles on this list?
Yeah, he's got the Beach Boys. That's good. I don't see the Beatles. You've got... Yep. 7 Death Grips albums. You could probably throw some Beatles on there instead of one of those. The PP
I just
record.
Say,
maybe get rid of the PP record.
Yeah. No Toby Keith on this.
No Toby Keith,
thing.
Not one instance. But
no Kenny Chesney, no Brad Paisley.
Topster, there are many topsters that I see on the internet that feel like they're asking for approval from others. This one feels like it's from the heart.
Yeah. This one's off the cuff.
Yeah, this one's off the cuff. I feel like this album helps me know Maddie more.
This album or this chart?
Did I say this album? I meant this.
You said this album.
The Strange Ranger album.
For sure.
I know nothing when I listen to the Strange Ranger album. I'm just like, I guess if you like that, go with God.
Hey, remember when we scared that guy like for real on the podcast? That was awesome. We made him watch R.I.P. Darwin.
Yeah, that was so sick. We had this guy on the last episode of the Maroon 5 series, and he wanted to talk about songs about Jane.
Yeah, and he had to watch R.I.P. Darwin. That was awesome.
Memories bring back you. Do. Yeah, I don't see any Maroon 5 on this list either.
Mm-hmm. No, I really feel like if you spent that much time with America's band, you should probably have some sort of representation for
no Crossfade, no POD, no Creed.
Yeah, no, we can't have Crossfade. We need another Death Grips album.
I'm assuming. I know Maddie made this album at least, or this chart at least. What?
You just did the same thing.
About
on the max for that, and now you just did it.
He made this about probably a month ago because that phony record is on here. He made it yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I know he's listened to Creed, Nickelback, Puddle of Mud, 3 Days Grace. Why aren't they on this list? Where are they? What's going on? Who's funding this?
I just think it's rude to listen to music and not put it on your chart, you know? Like, what's the deal?
Did Maddie listen to music for the first time yesterday?
Yes.
I like how we came in with the intention of tier listing anything, just put because the internet in F tier, and then have not.
Okay, hold on. Never Hung Over Again's great. That's on my list.
I want to tier list it that much. It's just
Lamelda Thanks is good.
Thanks is a great album.
If you're gonna have a Kanye album on your list, Yeezus is a fine pick. Another Dean Blunt album in the top 10. This is Marty we're talking about.
Yeah, image uploaded because it's just this black panel. Is
that Donda? Yeah. Maddie has Donda in his top 10.
DAE Donda. He has Donda twice.
No, that can't be Donda because there's the explicit tag in the corner, and I know that Donda wasn't explicit. I know Donda was clean. An anecdote: Max and I were at a record store like 2 hours ago, and they had like 6 copies of Donda that they hadn't sold yet, and they were all priced at like $75.
Oh my god!
I wonder why.
Jesus.
It's like a quadruple.
Like 8 discs.
Yeah, it's a quadruple LP, and it's fucking Donda, which is unlistenable. So that would explain why.
Yeah. Tangentially, Live at Folsom Prison was $50, or I would have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
Just some cash from Hunky Dory Records in the Triangle. Not just to dox myself a little bit.
I bought some crazy stuff for $4 there. That's the thing; you got to buy used.
The last 2 albums I bought from record stores were both Kraftwerk albums, so I'm
rolling in that German pussy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna die alive. It's cool.
Okay, so then we get to so right after our second Dean Blunt album, we get to our second Lomelda album, which I like
for Empathy.
That's my favorite of hers. That one's awesome.
Tell's an awesome song. You're not going to see me complain about Lamelda. This is where Maddie and my taste interlap a bit. Interlap, I don't think is a word, but we said it.
It's new.
Yeah.
If you say it, it's a word.
That's true. That's kind of what Shark Tank is about.
Yeah, by the way, Gavmax LLC is going on Shark Tank next season. Keep an eye out.
Yeah, stocks are falling, but
I think there's 2 albums recorded before the year 2000 on this one, and I'm trying to do the after 2010 count.
There's only 2 before 2000. This little Gen Z.
That's just all it is. Matt doesn't like old music. He likes the new music.
Yeah, old music sounds
Pathetic.
like poo-poo. I mean, the Beach Boys and the Velvet Underground are the only ones before 2000, right?
Is the Scott Walker album? Because Scott Walker's an old guy. Maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, where is that one?
The
very last one.
Yeah.
That one might have been The Drift. I don't know about that one.
Scott Walker...
Scott Walker, old ass bitch.
Yeah, he is.
Paul Walker's
2006. Bad news.
That's what I thought.
Come on.
Yeah.
Don't go near the water.
Would this chart pass on MU? / MU on the fortune?
Yeah. It would have passed in like 2016.
Yeah, they'd be like, based. Old music sucks. But now they're like, if you aren't listening to electro swing, you're a pussy.
They're bringing it
back. You have 6 Death Grips albums instead of 6 Perron Stellar albums.
Where's Chet Atkins, you pussy?
Jason Aldean.
Caravan Palace.
So Interpol, Turn on the Bright Lights, good album, fine, whatever.
Hey buddy, you live in Los Angeles, not New York.
Yeah, that's right. Wrong city. Death Grips.
What do you know about September 11th? What do you know about September 11th?
Death Grips, The Money Store. Why don't you try DMing Drake if you've got this album in your topsters? How about that?
September 11th in Los Angeles just means it's another sunny 80-degree day.
That's right.
I hate that when that happens.
Hey, guys, guess what? I went to the Money Store today.
Ew.
And
we got the
bag dance. This is going to be unlistenable.
I've never listened to this one. Does this one have something to do with the money machine?
Have you
Feels
never
so
seen the
clean like a
Bagman's
money
video?
machine? No, he's talking about Death Grips.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so different bands. Okay.
I think if Laura Less and Brian Pumper got in the same room, magic could happen.
Yeah, kick
So do I.
that other guy out of
Okay.
Gex.
What happened? So he's in jail, right? Why is he in jail?
All right, so the money store is at 13.
Yeah, man.
He's in jail for what you
she's
think he's in
bad
jail
as
for.
shit.
Yeah, leave that in the comments.
The nobody's favorite Velvet Underground record next, the self-titled
Honestly,
one.
that's my second favorite. I think that's kind of a base pick for Maddie.
I mean, like,
Where's the nanner?
God, I'm forgetting what's
White light, white heat.
Yeah, that one's good.
you would be a white heat, white light guy.
I am. I can't tell. I don't know what to tell you.
It's a good album. It's a good album.
Get that Andy Warhol shit out of here. Then Schlagenheim.
When did you all learn that Nico had questionable views on on relations?
I'm ringing the bell. Ding, 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 ding. Maddie's first good pick of the chart at number 15, I think. Black Midi Schlagenheim.
Yeah,
great record.
I will get down with Schlagen. I don't love it, but like I'll get down with it. I think Black Midi's
Ding, 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 ding,
I wish
ding,
it was
ding,
like Black
ding,
High, so I could be like Black High, more like Jack Black Midi.
more like Black Whitey.
Yeah, we're getting.
We're going there.
Then we've got the first of two 2022 records, which is an insane thing to do on your greatest albums of all time chart. Pendant Harp. I like this album. I think it's fine, but it's crazy.
Oh, I thought you didn't like it for a second. I was like,
No, I
it's
like
pretty
it.
Good. It's pretty good.
It's good.
There's some
Yeah,
good songs. Yeah, the one of the bonus tracks is pretty solid.
I like the one that samples 3-6 Mafia. I just remember that.
yeah.
But yeah, I think if we gave this another week, we'd get like Cheem on here or something.
Mm-hmm.
If this came 2 weeks earlier, we might get a Cheek Face album before
before Maddie decided they didn't like him. Then we've got an album only Maddie has listened to, Palm Rock Island. Does anyone think this exists? Not real.
We've heard reports that this is a real album, but we still have a field reporter checking that out.
Yeah.
The field reporter checking in right now. I tried to like this band when I first joined the podcast, but I couldn't do it. Thanks, Maddie.
Yeah, that's very
this
uncharacteristic of you to even try to like a band.
I was a nicer guy back in the day. I cared about stuff.
That is kind of Maddie's influence, though. Him saying like, "Oh yeah, no, this record's good," and it's like, "Oh, is this another Maddie album?" And I'll say, "No, not this time." And then it's like, it's
probably one of the best albums. Yeah, listen to Cola.
Yeah,
come on, man.
This isn't like, and I'm saying that, but like sometimes Maddie core do be hitting.
Y'all should do a Google image search for Palm the band, or just look at their Spotify artist photo.
Oh man.
Okay.
Palm the band.
I mean, then we've got Making a Door Less Open by Car Seat Headrest. Never heard of this one.
We're gonna go.
Yeah.
Let's throw this one with Childish Gambino in the F tier. I guess now we're just doing F tiers only.
I think this album's good, but Maddie's crazy. This is wild.
No, we have too many differing opinions to like form a definitive like S or A, but like we can just say like what the fuck is going on here.
Lil Ugly Mane, Oblivion Access, not even the good Lil Ugly Mane album.
That Maddie made up that he likes Making a Door Less. Like he just made that shit up.
Yeah. I don't believe it either. I know he said it so many times, but I've
collectively gaslighting all of us. It's a good album.
But okay, sure.
He's trying to do like a Frank Zappa thing, you know. When people are talking about like liking Rush, he's like, "Oh, well, I like Zappa." That's his Making a Door Less Open.
Toro y moi boo boo, more like poo poo. Moving on. James Blake, the color and anything.
Set at Pitchfork was very good this year.
That was kind of crazy. That converted me from a hater, because I was a Toro y moi hater, but that set was really good.
Yeah, the set was surprisingly inspired, but I can't imagine getting up for Toro y moi like any individual album.
Yeah,
it feels all like a pleasant, warm goo.
James Blake, the color and anything.
Sometimes the goo be hidden.
Read his Twitter feed. This is an L. Dating Jamila Jamil.
Yeah, I was about to say if you're dating Jamila Jamil, there's only one thing your Twitter could look like.
Yeah,
nasty stuff.
James Blake. I think it was last year, right? the album he put out is one of those albums that's so bad that it like destroys any goodwill you had in your career. For me, that one where it's like the album covers him melting in the forest.
His head on the floor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I had to look up James Blake as you were talking about it because I remember him releasing an album, but
It's an album so bad that it like makes me retroactively never like anything he's ever made.
Ouch.
Speaking of,
Maddie?
Damn by Kendrick Lamar, bad album.
I don't agree with that take.
I don't know. There were a lot of weird takes. Like, there's some weird anti-Semitism and shit that kind of signaled what was to come.
I've never liked Damn. I'll shout that one out. Well, yeah.
Well, have you heard Nation, at least?
I'm still waiting for that one.
Yeah, I think that's why.
I was thinking about Anti-Diaries in the shower today. I don't know why, but I was. It's insane that came out and everyone was like, I think he's making some points on this album.
Yeah, we're the 4 most qualified people to talk about Anti-Diaries.
yeah.
The thing is, he's
yeah.
We talked about Poo Poo, but now we're talking about PP with Death Grips No Love Deep Web.
Ew.
Nasty. I don't like looking at that cover.
You guys,
What?
I bought this one at the record store. It's just like a.
It's in a black sleeve. Yeah.
Do you have the copy with the bigger penis on the front?
The bigger penis.
Heard about the limited edition.
Guy who brings home the vinyl and starts comparing his own dick to it and getting depressed.
measuring the dimensions of the No Love Deep Web penis and comparing it to an iPhone X.
Big old donger.
Yeah,
I'm doing a sticker removal of the donger on the cover of No Love Deep Web and pasting it everywhere.
Yeah, shout out to
Photoshopping Brian Pumper's hog onto the No Love Deep Web cover.
I'm removing Zach Hill's penis from the cover and putting my own on there and sending it to women, being like, "Listen to this album."
The photo that I took from the Raleigh Beer Garden a couple weeks ago looks a lot like this.
Yeah, someone should write on your forehead.
You should all join the Indieheads Patreon for $1 a month, so you can maybe see me take a live piss photo because the urinal's EPA certified.
Oh man, you should also join so you can see all the cool Alf memes that are happening right now.
If you guys remember Alf, leave a like in the comments.
Max, you ever stand back from the toilet as you piss to see how much pee power you have?
No, I actually.
Oh yeah, we should talk about this, Hobson. Yeah,
I was gone for like 30 seconds.
I've never really measured my pee power. I've always felt like I have a good flow, but like I'm not testing it.
I got like 4
man. She bad as shit, little mama good. I'm a good. So we've been going for like an hour. Should we keep going?
7. I mean, I feel like we haven't tier listed anything besides just throwing some in the F tier.
Oh, what's the S tier? Let's go there.
What is the S tier?
Probably Smile. I don't know.
Yeah, let me see. Let's look at
what is
we already
Smile?
established that.
Oh, the Smile session.
I would say Never Hungover Again.
No way, brother.
It's a good album.
The Velvet Underground. That's a good pick.
Schlagenheim. It's a good pick.
Sure.
I'll let you have that.
That's probably it.
I would, in the Maddie tier list, Schlagenheim would probably be like an A.
Okay, wait. What is the best album on his chart? Let's just individually.
The best album on his chart, I think, is Schlagenheim.
It's Thanks to Rocket.
Mine would be Mad Villainy.
Oh,
we're not going to agree on this at all. I don't know. I'm looking at this.
Yeah. I want to hear Gavin's opinion here.
I mean, the Smile sessions aren't like real, but they're good.
I'm looking at like
Turn on the Bright Lights.
The highest on Maddie's chart versus like where I would have it the highest on
maybe
mine.
Rocket.
Rocket's awesome.
Yeah, I think Rocket would be my pick.
We argued about Rocket earlier this week. There are haters and losers.
Marty loves pissing his pants, is what I've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beto ass MF.
Beto ass
Trying
MF.
to take your guns looking ass, set ass.
It's not fucking funny to me listening to Rocket ass.
Hey, if you want to meet Maddie, head out to what is it, Rocco's Clown Room every Friday
yes.
night.
No, Sunday night karaoke at the Pooping Room in LA.
Jumbo's.
Yeah,
it was Jumbo's.
Hold on, let me pull up.
Maybe we should let Maddie proofread that or proof listen to this in case he doesn't want everyone to know he's at Jumbo's.
I've got Maddie's address right here. I'm just gonna read it off. It's 5920 W Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood, California. The zip code is 90028.
Did you just look up Jumbo's Clown Room?
No, I'm googling Arby's in LA.
I mean, ardent listeners of the podcast could geolocate Maddie pretty well based on a certain game we've played in the past. But I'm looking at this, and there's like 6 albums I could probably comfortably slot into an S tier, which is pretty good. Like Maddie said that our tastes are aligned, and when the Maddie core hits, it kind of hits. There are 6 albums I really like on here.
There's good albums on here. The thing about the chart is the placement and the like. I think
the damn ass classics are small as hell.
I think there's 10 artists total on this chart, and the recency bias, the artist repetition. I would just never do such. I would never have my name associated with such thing on the internet.
Remember, this is Maddie's first Topster. Maddie wasn't paying attention to the rules of the game when he made this. The unwritten code of making a Topster.
He misunderstood the assignment.
They get in front of Topsters and can't do it, is what I'm always saying.
I'll put another Death Grips album in here. What could go wrong?
Yeah. So hold on. Let's just run through some of these. No Live Deep Web. Good album. R+7, One Tricks Point Never.
R+7's a damn ass classic.
Good album. The Most Contrarian Ways Blood pick. Front Row Seat to Earth. Come on.
I remember he was on the Ways Blood train before everyone else. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him some credit for that. You know,
Front Row Seat to Earth is a good album. Wise Blood hasn't missed. So
yeah, Wise Blood's never missed. Girl Band, Holding Hands with Jamie. Not gonna pretend like that one's real. Spirit of the Beehive, Entertainment Death. I'm on the record
we
as
saw them in 2017 opening for Mannequin Pussy and Japanese Breakfast.
Yeah, I'm on the record. I'm on the record as a hater of this album.
I hate this album too. It sounds like dog shit.
I don't like this band.
I liked all their other albums. This one's bad.
Is this the guy from Glocamora? Is that correct?
I was about to say we saw him at Pitchfork, and there was a schlubby guy, and I was like, "Who's that?" And Jackie was like, "That's the guy from Glocamora." And I was like, "Okay, I've seen some Ivan tweets before. I know who that is."
Maybe go back to your better band.
So he makes music that sounds like that now.
Yes,
sounds like dog shit.
It's just honestly, it's fucking clown ass circus music. This album sucks.
That's why he's going to Jumbo's Clown Room. By the way, 7 years ago, Tyler Elder left a 1-star review of Jumbo's Clown Room saying, "The line never moves, and they force you to buy hats." So that's what's going on there.
How many hats do you own?
Yeah, show us the hat, Maddie.
Maddie goes out to the fucking amusement park that they go to in good time every Sunday night and just runs around and is like, "This is the best. Living in LA is so cool."
Freaking Hollywood. He's a damn ass celebrity, am I right?
Yeah.
Celebrities live in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Hollywood makes me want to puke.
That's
becoming a guy that chooses where they live based on the proximity to amusement parks.
Rare,
a lot of people, sex offenders, have to make that choice.
That's true.
That is true.
Rare Marty W, Sandy Alex G Rocket.
Yeah,
good
this
album.
is the best Alex G. Yeah. A lot of good Alex G.
This is the best Alex G record.
This is the best Alex G.
Facts.
What's this first song? Proud. That song is a freaking It's ready in their soul.
Proud as a bop.
Another Dean Blunt album nobody's ever heard of, Soul on Fire. Is that real?
I have listened to this album because I've heard Maddie talk about it a lot, and I'm like, I guess I like black metal a lot, I'm sure, but like no Dean Blunt album besides maybe a little bit of black metal too.
It's not even the last Dean Blunt album on this chart,
I'm not sure the Redeemer or what is this album called? Soul on Fire. Yeah. I'm not sure this album's real either. This phony album is definitely not real.
You skipped Mad Villainy. Yeah, this phony album.
No, it is real. You know why it's real?
It's real because Maddie reviewed it on
Pitchfork. Yeah.
Yep.
At some point, you stop reading this damn chart. Is more like it.
Hey, so got him, folks.
But not us. We continue to read.
Yeah, Black Metal 2, Dean Blunt. Sorry, I think it was already on this chart. I'm not going to believe those are two different albums. You put the same one on here twice.
Yep.
Next up, Room Inside the World. Once again, liked them better before they got canceled.
Thank you, Gavin. Jumbo's Clown Room seems like an awesome place.
Yeah.
Gavin sent a picture to our group chat. It's a brick wall.
Oh, Shawty bad and she hula hooping?
Jumbo's Clown Room has an awning that looks like it's for a sub shop. Probably 1990. So I would imagine that if you're spending your hard-earned dollars at a strip club, maybe make it Jumbo's Clown Room.
Yeah. The official strip club of Maddie Monroe from Pitchfork.
Doing karaoke every Sunday night. Let's speed round some of these. Danny Brown, Triple X, Rare Maddie W. That's a good album. Bjork, Volnicura, good album. 2 Death Grips albums in a row. Ex-Military, Government Plates, whatever.
Ex-Military is their best album.
I'm on Marty mode. Here comes a crazy L. LP, I'll Sleep When You're Dead. What are you doing? Yeah, come on. You running the jewels down here?
Yeah, I prefer the non-white member of that group.
That's right. having Kendrick Lamar To Pimp a Butterfly on your chart so low is only acceptable if Damn wasn't like 10 spots above it. That's insane to me. Angel Olsen, My Woman, W.
My Woman is a damn ass classic.
That's a good album, like a top 42 album of all time.
I called it a W. Haley Hendricks, Need to Start a Garden. W.
My Woman's on my chart too.
Yeah, that's a W.
I wish Angel Olsen was My Woman, if you know what I mean.
That's right.
For real. My thing with Angel Olsen is
I could fix her.
I feel like after My Woman, I was just. Yeah, I feel like after My Woman, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like everything she does, and then like the last, the All Mirror's remix album isn't a real album, but like Big Time was disappointing. All Mirror's is like fine,
yeah,
but I don't think she's making another My Woman again, and that's okay. That's okay.
Normalized artists not being good anymore.
Yeah, like normalized artists peaking early. Like
Angel Olsen got woke and went broke.
Facts.
Now that's real. That's something we need to talk about.
She got God on the gram playa. Remember that?
That's probably the coolest thing she's done after Post My Woman is posting the Plandemic conspiracy video and then apologizing
going
for
anti-vax.
Wait,
Let's be honest, she still believes that shit.
Wait. Repeat. I don't remember this.
She posted Plandemic, which is like a QAnon documentary, on her Instagram story, and then she got called out for it. And then she was like, oops, sorry. Sometimes you get God on the gram, playa, was her response.
Yeah. Let me find the actual.
Let's be honest, she still believes that shit, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. She lives in Asheville, North Carolina. She's like off that. She's drinking nothing but goat milk.
Where is Angel Olsen from? Because this could also.
I wish I could drink her goat milk.
Come on,
Come on, brother.
She's from St. Louis.
Yeah.
See, I don't know if we have any West Coasters out here. I've been living in the East Coast for a little bit, and Asheville's a lot like Bend. Now, if you've been to Bend, brother, you've been to Bend. I'm saying that because I didn't know how I was going to finish that thought. But Angel Olsen being kind of a weirdo I'd believe it. I'm just so ready to believe any person in the indie industry is a weirdo at this point. It's just like
check this out.
Be encouraged. I'm tired of these boring ass woke, just like boring.
Check this out. Angel Olsen, My Woman. How about My Women All Are Angels Olsen?
Will, I kind of understand. I kind of understand what you mean. Like Ariel Pink is like funnier than most people.
Ariel Pink freaking rules, and I'm way more likely to like his music now than I was before.
I want to be clear that the Indieheads podcast stance is if you did January 6th, your music is better because of it.
Facts.
And also, if you were there, we forgive you. We forgive you.
I don't even just forgive you. I support you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we're gonna recreate January 6th, but do it in a woker way.
Yeah, at a Pitchfork HQ for the phony write up.
I'm picketing outside Pitchfork headquarters until you let Maddie review the Cheem album.
Mm-hmm. I'm a Pitchfork I'm pitchforking outside of Pitchfork.
There we go.
That's why they called it
Yeah.
that, because they knew that they were trying to piss so many people off.
With
wanted to
I hate
go
these
off
damn
stage.
heroes to
Ryan,
be true.
Ryan Schweiber and whatnot posting his crazy Kid A reviews.
Yeah,
Shit
they
cat.
were 25 years on it.
Shit cat.
They're like more like
Them
they've never
boys
seen
are
a bitch.
cooking.
Am I right?
25 bands you can listen to instead of Radiohead. I think
More
we're-
like Gadio head.
that's
Yeah.
right.
This is never getting released.
No, this is the most this is the last episode.
This is like a $70 tier episode.
This is the post credit scene.
Yeah.
This is like what Ian wanted when he was talking about release AJ and Max just hanging out. And it's just,
Yeah, that's exactly what it-
it's just totally useless.
Give us a prompt and we'll go for an hour and a half.
Let us talk about nothing. The last album is Scott Walker, The Drift. I don't
How
think
about
any.
Scott Walker? You get some bitches. I don't know.
I remember.
Have a Scott walk on.
Yeah,
Walk
I
on,
remember
brother.
Maddie like posted about Scott Walker whenever he died a couple of years ago. Rip to him, but he was like
Yeah.
old, so it's like
here's
not. A
here's my
huge
impression
deal.
of Scott Walker. Oh, my tummy hurts so bad. I'm so
Oh,
sad.
I'm
I'm Scott
so-
Walker.
I'm
We're making like too many recent albums, and then
Oh.
Yeah, he dropped like 2 new albums and then died immediately. Just never released music.
Yeah, outsold by Chubby Checker L.
Facts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Chubby
I
Checker.
bet you
had
wish.
the
I bet
blueprint.
you wish you died in a plane crash,
Why
Scott
is
Walker.
Swift on here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
eventually we're gonna
just again.
have the Maddie cruise and every year Phony's book to play. Residency on the Royal Caribbean, Maddie. All right, we have reached the end of Maddie's Topster tier
A
list.
horrible list, just bad.
We said we liked like half the albums on it.
Can't believe we let this guy. It could be it could be a list of all good albums and still be a bad list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's only a bad list because it's Maddie's, but really it's a good list if it was anyone else, and we would love the creator of it otherwise.
Yeah, I hope Drake
hate
slides into
Maddie's,
Maddie's DMs and talks shit. That's what I think
Yeah.
the podcast needs for a boost in publicity.
I think we should make a Topsters for Maddie based on what the 4 of us should in the Discord chat. We're
Okay,
now
I'm putting the Paw Patrol movie soundtrack at number 1.
Yeah, obviously Brian Pumper, I Get Biz.
Yeah.
like that's the biggest exception on here.
I feel like we could develop a contrarian rationale for most albums if we get into the mentality of Maddie deep enough.
Yeah,
We could make it happen.
Mhm.
All right. I don't have any clean way to end this, but I feel like we've reached the end of our rope.
Nobody's listening anymore. We can all say the N-word if we wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a fragmented episode where we're all sending in clips, and this probably won't even be played. So if you're listening,
Where
at
do
this
you
point,
think it's
thanks-
gonna? Where do you think it's gonna show up? Is Maddie gonna play it first, last?
This
Not
is
on the show.
this is at the end. We're burning the filter here.
there will be like 30 minutes of just silence, so people think
It's
that
like
Maddie.
an RXK nephew.
Yeah,
got the-
yeah.
bonus track.
Yeah, so people think Maddie uploaded like a fucked up track and just skipped to whatever
Yeah.
next thing they're gonna listen to, and then he'll tack this on at the end.
This recording is going to be a creepypasta. Things are
We're
going
gonna
to
set this
talk
whole
about in
thing-
20 years. Like
We're gonna
this
set
is
the
what
whole
cursed
thing to
Max
a
die. Yeah.
Immediately posting on r/Lost Media, Lost Indieheads podcast episode. Please find.
At least the divers
What is-
episode.
Maddie, can you, or Max, sheesh.
Yeah.
Can you? 45 minutes. That's a good runtime. This is fine.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Yeah, just it's tacked onto everything else. People be sincere, and then just 45 minutes of bullshit. This has been great. It's been a pleasure chatting with you all. A little
And
fireside
now
chat.
here's Rose to talk about Titus Andronicus.
All right.
My transmission for episode 200 was 90 seconds long, and I listed all of the canceled bands that we've covered on the Indieheads podcast.
Oh, that's awesome! I can't wait.
Yeah, actually, I was sincere mode.
That's awesome. Well, I kind of did for a little bit too, and then I tier listed artists I'd like to smoke a cigarette with. Pretty much.
Yeah, I've never been sincere once in my life.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
talked about Jeff
no.
Rosenstock for 1 whole minute, and then I talked about Brian Pumper for like 16.
Oh, and it's shaved. Oh,
Yeah,
and it's shaved.
So if you listen to like all of those things and then listen to this, like, thank you. It's crazy that anyone would choose to do that with their time, but the fact that you have is a little honorable. So like,
Yeah,
Thank you
man.
all for your
Yeah,
time.
man. She
And,
bad as shit. Little mama, I'ma get on
I
my
don't have any
game
more.
and
So with that, I'm going to close it out. You all have a nice night.
Bye-bye.
I would like to announce that Will for Thrill, AJ Moser, Gavin, and Max have all been fired from the Indieheads podcast. They will be booted from the Discord server. GavMax Enterprises LLC. I'm immediately asking you to divest from your investments in the Indieheads podcast. I do not want your money. I do not want your time. I want you out of my life. JK, love you guys, but also AJ, why are you so mean to me, dude? Like, why are you that mean? Come on. Like, whenever I found out what was going on, I assumed, okay, Gavin and Max are probably going to hate it. Maybe Max will be more friendly because I have some albums he really likes on there. Will, I didn't know Will was going to be a part of it, and I don't really... Will was fine. AJ, what's going on, man? You projecting? You going through something? My man AJ here, if he's going to be mean to me, I'll be mean to him, all right? See, when I bleached my hair back in when I... Okay, I was going to be mean. I'm going to refrain. I'm going to speak and preach positivity because this is episode 200 of the Indieheads podcast, and now it is my time to do the prompt that I gave everybody else in talking about an album and a song that has been very important to me within the context of the pod. Now, for album, there's a number of choices I can make. I could talk about Dean Blunt's work, obviously, but I've done podcasts on the Redeemer, and that's an album that, like, it's my favorite album of all time. Probably would not have discovered it if not for being a member of the podcast, if not for doing little deep dives and searches for the pod. Very important record to me. But this record I've talked about a lot, and I have my feelings on it. And I feel like within the context of the pod, it's not that important of a record because it's really just like a singular me thing. So I'm actually going to pick an album where I think most people are picking albums that they really love. I'm going to pick an album that I hate, which is something that I don't really ascribe to as much these days. I'm definitely not. I try to be less of a hater when it comes to things at this point, because hating is fun. I love to be a hater sometimes, but for this pod, I kind of try to keep it chill at this point. I'm as I get older, I'm trying to relax a little more into old age. But a record that I hate, that I think is a very important part of the early canon of this podcast, is of course my roommate bouncing around, is Tame Impala's Currents, which is an album that I despise. And in fact, I despised it when it came out in 2015, and I despised it even more when I returned to it in 2020, as Jeremiah and I did a podcast on it, a retrospect episode, kind of looking back and being like, hey, this record has somehow endured what's going on here, but also revisiting our thoughts and being like, hey, do we like this record more? Do we hate it more? I hate it more. I think the record is... not to go all like Jordan Peterson, but I legitimately think that like Currents ruined like a generation of men. Bad record, low-key misogynistic record, evil album. Kevin Parker is an evil man. I don't care if there's nothing to back that up. Just the vibes are awful. But Currents, for the reason why I'm picking Currents is that I feel like that record, me just really going on the offensive against it, was kind of the first case of this podcast where it really felt like we had a stance that not many other people in the music, writing, podcasting, general journalism world had, where I think that record got just such just universal acclaim across the board. Just everyone loved that album and really, really went to bat for it. And me and Jeremiah and a number of other people in the podcast were like, what the fuck are these people talking about? This record is dog shit. Like, the lyrics are terrible. The songwriting is, it's just nowhere near as good as the last record. And I can't really say the last record's like a great record, but it's much better than Currents. It just felt like this weird culmination of like 80s this sort of 80s pastiche pop that was kind of happening right now. This culmination of the most recent movement. Although this 80s pastiche pop, it's still around, but I do feel like it's on its last legs. I do feel like people are getting tired of that sound in a lot of ways. But nevertheless, that record was like this critical consensus record that we really went against the grain on. And it's not the first time we've done this, and it's not going to be the last time we've done this, where a record comes out and it's like, what the fuck, what are people seeing in this album? And just trying to offer a different point of view of like, hey, this album, like, even to people who really like that record, I want to give them a different perspective, being like, hey, I want you to understand why some people might not like this record, and just offer a different point of view to go against the grain a little bit. And I feel like that's what's made our podcast stand out, is that for better or worse, we're not influenced by big industry. I mean, I'm kidding, but I'm not totally kidding. I feel like it helps that here's the crazy thing now, is that like when we first started this podcast, and for many years of the podcast, it wasn't really until the pandemic hit, we were all like relative outsiders to the industry. Like I was from the middle of nowhere in Illinois, essentially. Like I had no music industry connections. I had to work my ass off to kind of start gaining those connections and getting into that world. But still feel like I'm not totally indebted to this industry either, where like, you know, if I don't like a record, I'm going to speak my mind on it, you know, or, you know, sometimes it's not worth speaking my mind. It's like, okay, I'm not passionate enough, but like we were all, when we first started this podcast, we were all outsiders to the industry. Like no one knew who we were, no one respected us. People on the subreddit did not like us, especially, which I do wonder how that's changed, but I feel like we've just like, this podcast is called, it's the Indieheads Podcast in name only. We are, you know, even though I'm the main moderator on the subreddit at this point, I don't really consider our connection to that subreddit to be very large, because like most of our new cast members, like either most of our cast members do not use Reddit at this point, or like stopped using a while ago. There's a few of us, obviously, like me, Dylan, and Rose are all mods, so we're still on there actively, but a lot of people are just not even close to active these days. But I'm rambling and I'm ranting, but this is all to say, Currents by Tame Impala, for me, that's the album I want to choose, because that is the album that really solidified for me like what our voice was in the early days of the podcast. Obviously that voice has changed, because that's going to get to my song, where surprisingly, you know, I'm surprised that butt rock songs were not mentioned as much when people were giving their transmissions. I guess I'm surprised I'm not surprised, but yeah, I would think that people would be picking Blurry, and I think Natalie or somebody, I don't think it was Natalie, someone else mentioned Blurry. I think it may have been Jackie. I can't remember. I've got the COVID booster and a flu shot running through my veins, so my memory is a little joggy. But the song I want to talk about is Smooth Criminal by Alien Ant Farm. You might think that's a weird choice. You know, if I'm going to pick any song from the Butt Rock series, you know, why not All My Life by Foo Fighters? Why not Blurry? Why not any of these songs, you know? But why am I picking like a random song from the first episode? Well, that song is the reason why the Butt Rock number ones got started, because I was going through the alt rock charts, all the number ones, and I was like, what song was number one on 9/11? And of fucking course, it is Smooth Criminal by Alien Ant Farm. Just the funniest coincidence in the goddamn world, where we had a smooth criminal in the White House pulling off 9/11 while Alien Ant Farm was rocking the charts with Smooth Criminal. But like that song, just seeing, basically it was just so funny to me. Like, okay, like let's just, what was America listening to like before and after 9/11? Like, and I feel like the alt rock charts, I feel like that is, you know, I feel like the pop charts, you're going to get an accurate read, but I feel like the mindset of the people that I was more interested in looking at was going to be the alt rock people. Like that's where I was more interested in. And obviously we're an indie music podcast, and I feel like the history of alt rock is very important to indie music. So, you know, it made sense to kind of combine those two. But without that song, we would not have the Butt Rock number ones. Like I was like, wow, this is funny. And I got Gavin and Alex and Will together, and we did that podcast, and we had so much fun. We're like, hey, let's just keep going through the chart. And, you know, that second episode, we got Jeremy from Pitchfork, and that's like, everything changes from there, because immediately after years and years of being outside the industry, of no one respecting us and no one really caring about us, we were finally validated, and we had like a legit writer from the biggest music publication to us on the series, on the podcast. And that was crazy. We had you know, relatively big guests before, but that was the one where it's like, holy shit, like this guy is, you know, a very respected person in the industry. What's he doing on our stupid podcast about butt rock? And from there, I mean, that first month or so of the series was just crazy, because it's like doing this butt rock series, and I emailed, just random chance. I've been a fan of the Introducing podcasts from Chris Wade and Molly O'Brien, of course. And I found it through that podcast because I knew Chris. I was a big Chapo fan, and I knew Chris was produced that show, and he also had the show with his wife. I was like, wow, this show is really funny, insightful look at music, and I feel like, you know, even if our formats are different, we kind of have a similar perspective on music. And so by chance, I just emailed them being like, hey, you guys should do an episode on Scott Walker. And I sent that back in like February of 2020. And then like a few months later, like I think in September or October, I got an email from Molly being like, hey, sorry I didn't respond to this earlier. Hey, we would love to do this episode. Do you want to come on? And I was like, what? Like, I'm just some random guy. Like, why are you why are you asking me to be on your podcast? Like, I suggested as a topic. I didn't expect to be on this podcast. But, doing Butt Rock and then doing introducing on Scott Walker, just like it was this double dose of being like, holy shit, like people I really love and respect. Well, love is a strong people I love now, I'll say, because Chris and Molly, I love them to death. They're great, wonderful people, and like they do more for this podcast than they probably should, which is like being on the podcast and like doing our streams and shit. But people that I really respected were responding to the work that I was doing after years and years of work. And really, it wasn't until like I think earlier in that year, I started taking the podcast more seriously. I was like, okay, like we're gonna stop doing these like Skype call shit. Like we're gonna actually edit these episodes. Like we're gonna like lay this down. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get an editing software, and we're gonna actually get this done professionally, at least relatively professionally. And it's just funny that like basically the moment that I'm like, hey, I should actually put some work into this podcast. Oh, hey, our podcast, people are actually listening to it and liking it and giving us feedback and all this stuff. And, that month where it's like we're getting the Butt Rock series going and then Jeremy comes on and then I'm on introducing, just like that gave us such a platform that like that I still don't know if we deserved it, but it's just incredible. And so like, and all because I thought it was funny that an Alien Ant Farm Michael Jackson cover went number one, or was number one during 9/11. So that's just, so thanks to 9/11, this podcast is still going, because it's kind of funny. I feel like Will's transmission, I'm gonna go way long in this, but I'm the host, so I deserve to go long. Will was not totally wrong when he said that before the Butt Rock series, the podcast was kind of on its was kind of in its dying, was starting to die out, where it's like we were all still really good friends and we were all still chatting every day, but it was just really hard to kind of get people to do a podcast. Like our output was very sporadic. Like we had a wave of inspiration when we did the decade list and we had all those retrospect episodes. Like, okay, like here's this wave of inspiration that's hitting and we're getting on a regular schedule, and then pandemic hit. People are kind of like, I don't like. But before Butt Rock, we were kind of getting into like some kind of routine schedule, but it was not until that series where like we started getting like an actual weekly schedule. Obviously, the Patreon has been a big reason why we are now like a weekly podcast, because oh shit, people are now paying for this. There are expectations. We have to keep this. We have to keep doing this every week, and because of that, it's so funny because in the dying days, which I would say like 2019, 2020, in that weird pocket, like we just had no ideas. We're just like, okay, indie music is kind of boring to us these days. Like we still like this music, we still love this music, but like talking about it on a podcast, we were just not interested in that anymore. And so the Butt Rock series just came at a perfect time where it completely reformatted this podcast, completely changed, how we did things, where it's like, oh, hey, shit, we actually have like, we have ideas and we have like topics, and we can actually really dive in and do something with this like new kind of playlist format that we are doing. And, like it's just, again, like I'm going to mention a Butt Rock song because without Butt Rock number ones, this podcast does not exist as it stands. So like forever grateful for like, again, I could get a spiel. I could thank everybody, but I don't want to spend too much time. So cast members, I love you all. You're all very important to me. Even if you guys bully me sometimes, I know it's out of love, and like it is a joy. It is a joy every single week getting to talk to you guys, and getting put it making content and getting it out there to the world. Like it means the world to me, because this podcast saved my fucking life. Just straight up. Like I when I started this podcast, I was just like a lonely high school kid, and during the first year I went through like my first like real like big rough breakup, and like I was just down the fucking dumps. Like I just maybe the most depressed I'd ever been in my entire life. Maybe even still, I would say maybe the most depressed I've ever been in my entire life. And this podcast fucking saved me. And this community of people that I had found really saved my life and saved me out of the depths of depression and stuff like that. And this isn't to say like, oh, I'm cured of depression because this podcast. That's obviously not the case. But especially in the past 2 years, really. I mean, we've always had a really strong, special community, us cast members, but being able to add, our fans to this community and really have, you guys actually, our listeners like actually respond to us, it means the fucking world. And like, I feel like I'm in terms of like my mental health, I am at the best I currently am because of this community. And, like, this podcast has given me so many opportunities and has let me meet so many people that I did not expect to meet. And it's just it changed my fucking life. It changed my fucking life for the better. It taught me so many goddamn things, and I've gotten to meet so many people and got to know so many of you. And like, I would not be writing if I would not be doing my writing every now and then if not for this podcast. I would not be doing a lot of things without this podcast. And so I'm forever grateful to you guys, and I thank you all for paying my rent every month. That is really awesome for those who subscribe to our Patreon. If you're not on our Patreon, hey, patreon.com/IndieHeads We're at 200. Give us a little gift for making it this far. But yeah, I think that's all I gotta say. And yeah, I love this podcast. I love our community. I love my cast members. And let's keep doing it. We're having fun. And I want to talk about Lily's comment really quick because, it's crazy to see what we're all doing now. I mean, we have multiple members of the podcast that all have fucking pitchfork bylines now. That's fucking crazy. We have people with pitchfork bylines and stereo gun bylines. Like, that's fucking crazy that our little podcast is starting to like invade some of the kind of the traditional music media that's around, and that's just fucking crazy to me and insane. And like, it's funny how like in many ways, like, some of us are getting too big to this podcast. I mean, not too big, that's definitely the wrong word. Some of us are getting so busy that doing this podcast can be really tough, but like, we have so much fun doing it, and we all love each other too much where it's like, I don't want to put a stop to this anytime soon. We're on a fucking hot streak, and I don't want to stop anytime soon. I don't want any of us to stop. Like, I want to keep this going because it's fun. And yeah, I love you all. That's all. That's what I gotta say. So yeah, that's it for my spiel. So let's into the outro. I say thank you all for listening to episode 200. If you've stuck with us since like the beginning, holy shit, how we were like completely unlistenable for so goddamn long. But if you're a more recent fan, I'm grateful for anyone that listens to this fucking podcast, because like, it's like that. Yeah, I don't know. So thank you all for listening to this little special episode, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.